Fire in the Sky, Volume 1, Grand Tactical Battles in the Skies over Germany, 1944, How to Play. Combat. Hey, I hope you're enjoying Fire in the Sky. We're going to talk today about how combat works. In Fire in the Sky, squadrons come together and very quickly we resolve the action. After you decide who lives and who dies, we go to the scatter table, which is, I think, something unique about this game. Where do all these planes end up after this crazy dogfight? We're also going to talk about the difference between attacking bombers and attacking fighters. So let's get to it. Combat is always initiated by the squadron that is currently activating, whether that is on an activation card or from a successful reaction attempt. Initiating combat with enemy bombers is different from initiating combat with enemy fighters. Let's start with fighter versus fighter combat. To attack an enemy fighter section or group of sections, the activating aircraft must be at the same altitude and in the same zone. The activating section or group of sections may only attack one enemy section or group. If the enemy is in a group, you must attack the entire group. The attacker then expends from 0 to 3 action points, depending on what type of attack they want to perform. This also depends on how many action points are available. In our example, an attacking P-47 squadron of 3 sections chooses to conduct a dogfight attack against an Me-109 squadron of 2 sections in its zone. Next, determine who can shoot and how many firepower dice they will roll. Look at each aircraft's firepower on the stat sheet. It will tell you the number of dice each section of fighters will roll and what type of combat they are allowed to participate in. In a dogfight, fighters with F firepower may shoot. Each P-47 section can roll 1d10, giving them a total of 3 dice. The Me-109s can also roll 1d10 per section for a total of 2 dice. If the attack was a side or rear bounce, the P-47s would not shoot back, as F firepower only participates in dogfight if you're the defender. The stats chart will tell you what number or higher is needed to score a hit on your opponent. In a dogfight, a 7 or greater is needed. In our example, the P-47s roll a 2, 3, and 9, scoring 1 hit. The Me-109s roll a 3 and 6, scoring no hits. For each hit scored, a saving die roll is made. Look at the stat sheet to see what number or higher must be rolled to save the hit. Any hit that is not saved will destroy 1 aircraft section. Here, the Me-109 save number is a 6 or higher, but the P-47 has a note in its firepower that indicates all saves made against it are at a -1 die roll modifier. So the Me-109s need a 7 or higher to pass. They roll a 6 and 1 is destroyed. As soon as the results of the combat are completed, any remaining aircraft sections immediately roll on the scatter table to determine where they end up after the swirling air combat. Roll 1d10 per aircraft section and apply the result. The Me-109 rolls a 9, which is essentially no effect. They stay in the zone at whatever altitude they started the combat at. The P-47 squadron leader rolls a 1, which is return to base. That section is removed from the game as it is out of ammunition. The other sections roll a 4 or 7, which is break off. Each section will first drop 1 level of altitude. If the section is already at low altitude, it will not lose any further altitude. The sections also move to an adjacent zone to which the die is pointing. Combat against bombers is slightly different. It remains the same that to attack a bomber group, the fighters must be in the same zone and at the same altitude. But you will notice that it costs 0 action points to attack a bomber from any angle: dogfight, side bounce, or rear bounce. If you begin your activation in the zone with a bomber group, you can make any one of these 3 attacks for no cost in action points. But remember, you can only use one combat action per activation, so choose wisely. But if you need to move into the zone with the bombers during your activation, then you can only attack the bombers from the way you moved into their zone. Remember, bomber groups must face one side of the zone they occupy. If you enter a bomber zone from one of the front 3 zones, you can only make a dogfight action. If you enter from the side, you can make a side bounce. And if you enter from one of the rear 3 zones, you can make a rear bounce. Once you enter the zone, you are not required to make the attack, but if you choose to, you are limited to one specific type. Dogfight and side bounce attacks against bombers are conducted as normal. Rear bounce attacks on bombers is slightly different. When the players are determining how many firepower dice they have, the attacking fighters need to state if they are going to dive through or hang on the tail of the bombers. If they dive through, the rear bounce attack is resolved as normal. Here, the attacking FW-190s declare they are diving through, so they roll 2d10, 1 for each Focke-Wulf section. The 3 B-17 sections roll 6d10, 2 per section. The FW-190s need a 5 or greater to hit and roll a 5 and 9, scoring 2 hits. The B-17s roll 2 saves, needing a 5 to save. Normally they would need a 4 or greater, but the FW-190s have the Butcher Bird characteristic, which give them a -1 to all bomber save rolls. The B-17s roll a 5 and a 4. One B-17 is shot down, and the other detaches from the group, leaving the original squadron of 3 B-17 sections as 2 individual sections, which are now more vulnerable. The B-17s would then fire back. They roll 6 dice, needing 10s. Bombers and rear gunners only ever hit on a roll of 10. For our example, we'll say all the bomber shots missed, which isn't an unlikely occurrence. The ME-109G sections then roll on the scatter table and must apply all of the results. They are not tailing the bombers unless they've chosen hung on the tail. If the FW-190s choose to hang on the tail of the B-17s, the resolution of combat is slightly different. The fighters will roll firepower dice as normal, so they would roll 2d10. The bombers will double their firepower number. In this case, they will roll 12d10, 4 per B-17 section in the group. In our example, we will say that all of the shots from both sides miss. The fighters then roll on the scatter chart, but since they are hanging on the tail, they ignore break-off results. Instead, they treat them as having rolled an 8 through 10, which is no effect. The FW-190s here roll a 2 and a 5. The 2 causes one fighter section to return to base. The 5 normally causes the other fighter section to scatter, but in this case, it ignores that results and remains tailing the bomber. I hope that was helpful to you. If it was, please press the like button. It helps us immensely. Now we have a lot of other explainer videos that you can check out. Go watch them all. We'll help you learn how to play. And we're going to have a lot of great content coming up, including the Pacific, the Med, all kinds of great stuff. So stay tuned.